Ever feel like you're trying to piece together a puzzle, but
Hmm.
you've got pieces from like a bunch of different boxes?
Mm.
You've got all these articles, maybe some research notes, stuff like that, and you're just trying to get the full picture without, getting lost.
Yeah, totally. It
Yeah,
feels like swimming in information sometimes, but you're still thirsty for like real understanding.
exactly. So today, we're diving deep into how your brain actually tackles this. We're looking at the different ways we think when we're faced with multiple sources of information.
That's right. And in today's world, you're just constantly bombarded, aren't you?
Yeah.
Information from all sides.
Constantly.
So being able to sift through it, understand the different angles, and well, come to your own informed conclusions, that's basically a superpower, but it's not always easy.
No, definitely not. And that's really where these ideas come in higher order thinking, HOT,
Okay.
critical thinking, CT, and critical analytic thinking, CAT.
Okay.
Now, I know those sound maybe a bit academic, like classroom terms,
A little bit, yeah.
but trust me, getting the hang of what these actually mean can really sharpen how you learn and what you take away when you're trying to get well informed without feeling completely, overwhelmed.
And to help us make sense of it all, we've dug into this really insightful review article. It's from the Educational Psychology Review.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, researchers Alexander List and Yuting Sun did, I think, a fantastic job breaking down how these different types of thinking actually show up when you're learning from more than one text.
So we're getting the highlights reel, basically.
Pretty much, we're giving you a shortcut to understanding their work.
Okay, so our mission today is super practical. We want to clearly define what HIT, CT, and CAT actually look like when you're trying to learn from different articles, studies, maybe even just your own notes.
Right.
The goal is that by the end of this, you'll have a clearer handle on these distinctions. And hopefully that makes you a more effective, maybe more confident learner.
Sounds good. So where do we start? The article kicks off by looking at what's actually going on inside your head, right? When you're reading, say, 3 different articles on the same topic.
Yeah, exactly.
What's fascinating is that your brain isn't just like passively absorbing each article one after the other.
Right, it's not like downloading files.
No,
Yeah.
it's actively working. It's comparing, contrasting, trying to find where they overlap and, importantly, where they disagree.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of subconsciously looking for connections, trying to build a coherent picture.
Yeah, it's definitely not like reading 3 separate unrelated emails. There's this active process trying to synthesize it all. So, okay, let's get into the terms. How do these researchers define higher order thinking, HOT, specifically when dealing with multiple texts?
Okay, so according to List and Son, a really key part of HOT in this context is evaluation.
Evaluation. Okay.
Think about it. When you're reading different opinions on, I don't know, the best way to brew coffee,
Okay, yeah.
one article might swear by a French press, another loves pour over. Almost immediately, you start evaluating which one sounds better to you.
Right. Based on maybe your own preferences or what you already know, or even just how convincing the writing is.
Exactly. So even without consciously thinking, I am now evaluating, you're making these little judgments as you go.
Okay, so you're making judgments, and this connects to something called top-down processing, doesn't it?
It does. They point to other researchers who talk about how HIT involves deliberately using what you already know, your prior knowledge, to make sense of the new stuff.
So you're actively pulling in your background knowledge.
Right. It's like using a map you already have in your head to navigate a new area rather than just, blindly following turn-by-turn directions.
Okay.
It's different from just having some random related facts pop into your head passively. This is more deliberate.
Gotcha. And here's a little bit of trivia I found interesting in the article. They mention that when Bloom first came up with his famous taxonomy back in the 50s, he didn't actually label the different levels as higher and lower. That was something that kind of got added on later by others.
Huh, that is interesting. It's a good reminder that these categories aren't totally set in stone, Our understanding evolves.
Definitely.
But that core idea of HOT engaging in more complex thinking beyond just remembering stuff that's been around a while.
Okay, so HOT involves evaluation, actively using what you know. How does critical thinking, CT, build on that foundation when you're juggling multiple sources?
Right, so CT takes that evaluation piece and adds a crucial why.
Yeah, the justification.
Exactly, justification or substantiation. It's not enough just to say, okay, I think the French press article is better.
Right.
Critical thinking demands that you explain why you think that. Maybe the French press article gave more detail on flavor, or it cited expert reviews. You're justifying your evaluation based on the evidence within the texts.
Ah, okay. So it's moving past just a gut feeling or a preference
Mhm.
to actually pointing to specific reasons based on what you've read across those different coffee articles, for instance.
Yeah.
You're sort of building a mini argument in your head.
Precisely. You're actively looking for the evidence, the reasoning, the support behind the claims in each source.
Okay.
And this often involves comparing the quality of the arguments, maybe spotting potential biases, or seeing if one source just offers more concrete data than another.
Right. Checking their work, essentially.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay. And then we get to critical analytic thinking.
Mm-hmm.
See on tight, this sounds like it's dialing up the sophistication another notch.
Mm-hmm.
What does CAT involve?
See on tight takes that evaluation and justification
Mm-hmm.
and emphasizes doing it consistently and systematically.
Consistently and systematic. Okay, what does that look like?
So it's not just about looking at one specific point where the coffee articles disagree.
Okay.
Instead, you're looking for broader patterns in how each article or each source presents its information overall.
Ah. So maybe, going back to the coffee example, instead of just comparing brewing methods, you might start to notice if, say, one website that really pushes pour-over always seems to have ads for pour-over equipment.
Exactly. That's a great example. You're looking at the bigger picture. How is the information being presented across the board? What are the underlying approaches?
Analyzing the source itself, not just the content.
Right. You might consider who wrote it, their potential expertise, who they seem to be writing for, whether there might be any, hidden agendas or strong perspectives influencing things. There's other work, like Alexander's, that really dives into this deeper analytical lens.
It really sounds like HOT, CT, and CT are interconnected then. Kind of like rungs on a ladder, maybe. Each one building on the previous.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And the researchers, List and Son, they found that when we're actually trying to learn from multiple texts, we often need to use all these types of thinking. It's not just one or the other.
That's a really key takeaway from their review, yes. When you're faced with different perspectives, maybe conflicting information, you pretty much have to evaluate, justify, and analyze systematically to make real sense of it all.
Right.
It might not always be a neat, linear, step-by-step process in your head, but these different levels of thinking are usually all swirling around in the mix.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh.
Now, the article introduces another really interesting idea, one that goes beyond just understanding what's already out there. They call it devising.
Ah, yes, devising.
What exactly is devising in this context?
So devising is about taking the knowledge and maybe even the strategies you've picked up from learning from multiple texts in one situation
Okay.
and using them to create something original or solve a problem in a new, different situation.
Wow. Okay. So it's synthesizing what you've learned in a novel way and applying it somewhere else.
Exactly. It's application plus creation, really.
So, sticking with coffee, it's not just knowing the pros and cons of French press versus pour-over. It's maybe using that understanding, maybe combined with something you learned about, say, material science, to invent a whole new kind of coffee maker or a new way to market sustainable coffee.
Precisely. And the researchers really stress that to devise effectively, you absolutely have to be using Hype T, CT, and CET. All three are necessary.
So devising actually demands those other thinking skills. You need to evaluate the information you have, justify why you're picking certain bits, and apply it all systematically and analytically to this new challenge.
Absolutely. You can think of it as perhaps the ultimate goal of learning in this context, not just to consume and understand, but to actually create something new from it.
That's a really powerful way to think about learning, isn't it? It shifts the focus from just being a receiver to being an active creator or problem solver.
It really does.
The article also touches briefly on something else, how our own feelings and attitudes can play a role. They mention self-system considerations. What's that about?
Yeah, that's an important layer they bring in. It's basically about how your own beliefs about yourself as a learner,
Okay.
like your confidence.
Yeah, your confidence, whether you find the topic itself interesting, your motivation, even your emotions while learning.
Mm.
How all that can influence how you engage with and ultimately learn from different sources.
Right, because it's not just a purely cognitive process.
Exactly. The researchers point out that while a lot of the focus has been on the thinking skills, the HOTCTC key stuff,
Yeah.
our feelings, our motivations, our beliefs about the task, they're a big part of the equation too.
And they mentioned some emerging research looking specifically at things like how our interest in a topic, and also these things called epistemic
Right,
emotions,
epistemic
like
emotions.
curiosity or maybe confusion or even
Mm.
surprise,
Right.
how those feelings can affect how we process information from multiple sources.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it. If you're genuinely curious about something, you're probably going to dig deeper into the different sources, right?
Yeah.
You'll be more motivated to wrestle with conflicting information. But if you find it boring or maybe overwhelmingly confusing, that can shut down the learning process. Yeah, you might just skim or
Yeah.
give up. That makes sense. Okay, and finally, they mentioned one specific study that sounded quite unique. Students were asked to rate how certain they felt about a medical diagnosis after reading multiple medical texts.
Yeah, that was an interesting one they included. What's notable there is that the study was looking at the students' confidence in their solution.
That's just kind of thinking about your own thinking. Metacognition.
Exactly, it relates to metacognition. But the review article noted that while this kind of self-appraisal of certainty is interesting, it wasn't something most studies they reviewed explicitly measured as a primary outcome.
Okay.
But it highlights another real-world aspect of dealing with multiple sources, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How sure can you actually be about your conclusions when the sources aren't perfectly aligned?
That's a great point. Dealing with uncertainty is a big part of it.
Okay,
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together for everyone listening.
sounds good.
When you're faced with a bunch of different articles, reports, whatever, you're not just passively reading.
Yeah.
You're actively thinking on different levels.
Right.
First, there's higher order thinking, HOT. That really involves evaluation, judging the information.
Making assessments.
Then there's critical thinking, CT. That's where you're not just evaluating, but also justifying those evaluations, explaining the why behind your judgments based on the evidence.
Providing the reasoning, the backing, yeah.
And finally, there's critical analytic thinking, CAT. This is where you take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and systematically analyze the sources themselves, looking for patterns, potential biases, overall approaches.
Applying that evaluation and justification consistently across the board.
Exactly. And building on all of that is this really cool idea of devising.
Yeah, the creative application.
Using what you've learned from all that thinking to actually create something new or solve a new problem, which, as you said, really requires you to be firing on all those high cheat, CT, and CAT cylinders.
Absolutely. It demands that deeper level of engagement.
So hopefully, by understanding these distinctions a bit better, you, the listener, can be more strategic, more effective when you're learning.
Yeah, definitely.
When you approach your sources, you can maybe consciously think, okay, am I just evaluating here? Or do I need to dig deeper and justify this? Am I looking at this systematically?
It gives you a kind of framework, doesn't it, for navigating all that information out there.
Yeah, a toolkit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, maybe you can aim for that higher level of devising, using your knowledge to generate new insights, new solutions.
Become a more confident and capable thinker in the process.
So here's something to maybe mull over. Think about the last time you were trying to make sense of, I don't know, a few different articles or maybe even just conflicting opinions you saw online.
Okay.
Where do you think you were primarily operating? Were you mostly evaluating what you read? Or were you also actively trying to justify why you felt one source was maybe more credible than another? Were you looking systematically?
Good question.
And maybe think about how understanding these different levels, HOT, CT, CAD, how that awareness might help you not just understand information better in the future, but actually use it to devise something new down the road.
Yeah, how can you move towards that creative synthesis? It's a great
Yeah.
thing to reflect on.